Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Delivering Dunamis podcast, where we are inspiring transformation through the strength and the power of the Almighty. My name is Matthew Deibler. My mission today is to deliver a message that will instill in you a new level of confidence that you can take with you wherever life leads. I want to share with you the victory. And I want to offer you this assurance. You can't lose. Imagine how you would live your life if you knew that you couldn't fail. How would that affect the decisions that you make? How you go about your day, how you approach perceived risk? We live in a world where the darkness at times feels pretty heavy. It's all around us. But we know that the darkness has not overcome the light, and it never will. We also understand that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. God delivers through the word so many powerful assurances of the victory. We know it's there. We know how the story concludes. We don't know when the story concludes, but we know who is the victor in the end. And we can embody that in our lives each and every day. That's the beauty of God's love. There's so much freedom in that. I want everyone to experience that. It's a big part of what inspires me to share this message with you on this podcast. It's a lot of the reason that I show up. When you align yourself with the will of God, when He outlines that path for you to follow and you begin taking those steps forward in faith, where He leads, you cannot lose. Many of us get stuck. We get stuck in our natural minds. We like to try and figure everything out. We want to know the outcome before we take one step forward. And that often leads to a great deal of anxiety. When that spirit of fear takes over, it can paralyze us. That's when these thoughts of failure start creeping in. You get bogged down in it. You start questioning, if God's calling you in this uncomfortable direction, well, what if? What if it doesn't work out? I'll look like a fool. I'll go broke. I'll never be able to provide for my needs or my family's needs. Be the laughing stock of the world. I'll look crazy. You can really, really find yourself in a defeated posture quickly when you start enabling those thoughts to take root. That's why I often encourage people to, when they feel the nudge, without hesitation, go forward. Because the longer you spend, trying to figure it all out in your natural mind, the more vulnerable you are to these influences, demonic influences, lies from Satan himself. But when you step forward in faith, all of the risk essentially fades away. You can go boldly without any fear of consequence. And when I'm talking risk, I don't mean being reckless. I don't mean making decisions that, align with your will only and not the will of God's. But when you are living in the spirit and you feel that nudge, and perhaps God is calling you to do something that's a little outside of your comfort zone, maybe way outside of your comfort zone. Maybe it feels awkward or uncomfortable. When he does that, I want you to know that you can trust stepping in that direction. And that when you do so, he will reward your obedience. You cannot fail. You can't. It's simply impossible. God is perfect. He does not embody failure or defeat. And so where he leads, there is victory. What we need to do is we need to get out of our heads what we perceive to be victory. That was one of the things that really paralyzed me many years ago when I believed that I was called to write my first book. I went down that path initially with great courage and confidence in the Lord. And then when it became time for me to write, once the publishing agreement was in place and I was, assigned the task of completing the book, not only did it overwhelm me because of the magnitude of the project, but also because I couldn't perceive in my mind how God was going to make it a success. I was basically defining it a failure without ever having, put any words on paper. I couldn't visualize how God was going to take my book and reach many people with it. And then I had these, earthly desires. I wanted to write. Yeah, sure. I enjoyed writing, but how would I ever make enough money from it to actually make it a full-time career? And if it didn't really reach anybody, then what else would I gain from it? It was all about me, and what I believed success looked like. When I found out, years later, having written the book now, is that the success was just stepping forward in faith. And the wins, they've begun to show up, and they've been so beautiful. And if you've read my book, The Devil and the Children of God at the End of the World, I'm thankful that you have chosen to be a part of this journey with me, to claim the victory in the Lord. And if you've offered kind feedback, if you've left a review, I truly appreciate that as well. And I guess that's what I want to share, is that God's wins have been revealed through this. I've met amazing people who have been impacted by the book in a profound way in some cases. And the success really has nothing to do with the number of copies sold. I believe that, he'll do with it what he intends. We hit number one bestseller in the adult Christian ministry category, which was a huge blessing. But the success of the book really has nothing to do with those types of designations. It has to do with God's will. And if it reaches people all over the world, that's amazing. That's amazing. If it allows me to write full time, that's amazing too. But I think God has more in store, and he will reward the obedience. As soon as I finished the book, I got the nudge to start the podcast. And through this experience, I've met amazing people. And I've extended my reach. Not my reach, God's reach, because it's really his message that lives within me. It's his victory that lives within me, and he's allowed me to create a platform where I can share that, magnify it. And so you often don't know. You really can't know. You can't have any vision for where he's taking this whole thing. But you can trust that it's going to be successful. If it's his will, it cannot fail. Period. That's it. So there's no point in getting caught up in the doubt, in the what ifs. If you know the truth, if you know the path that you are called to follow, go forward and claim the victory. You can't lose. What an amazing way to live. Imagine that. Imagine waking up every morning, getting into conversation with God, allowing him to direct your steps throughout the day, and knowing that wherever he takes you, you are the victor. You cannot lose. That doesn't mean that you're completely immune to adversity and the challenges of life. Those will show up. And the more that you go boldly in the direction of your faith, you will experience interference from God's adversary. I still encounter that quite a bit, and it's in many ways it's intensified. But the Holy Spirit gives me the power to discern those influences. And I know that when I feel them present themselves, that I know that it's not God. I understand his voice. I understand his love. And so, I take those pokes and those prods at my flesh and I dismantle them. I take those thoughts and I make them obedient to Christ. And I keep stepping forward as a victor. I'll never assume the posture of a victim again. I'll never be defeated so long as I stay true to my faith. Sometimes the victories don't look exactly as we would perceive them to be when we start out on the path. But they're still victories. Sometimes they result in opportunities to grow, to learn. And that's a blessing too. Sometimes the opportunity to grow is the victory. If you hadn't taken the first step forward, confidently, boldly, then you would have never reached that point where you would have the breakthrough in your transformation, the growth opportunity. It's like stepping stones. And the more that you go forward in obedience, the more God rewards that. The more that he gives you, the more that you evolve, the more that your vision expands in the purpose that you are called to fulfill. The more his victory is magnified in your life, and the more that it extends to others outside of your life. You can't lose. I want you to keep that in mind throughout your day. Align yourself with his will. Trust, even when it's awkward and uncomfortable, that when he calls you to do something, there is victory in it. You only need to choose it. You only need to claim it. No hesitation. No time for doubt, for fear, for an identity of failure. No, that's not you. You are a child of God. You are chosen. And by the blood of the Lamb, you are a victor. No matter how dark things get around us, stay in victory. Don't allow the chaos of the world to disrupt what you know as your truth. The darkness has not overcome the light, and it never will. And no weapon formed against you shall prosper. You, child of God, own your freedom through Christ. You own the victory through Christ. Claim it. I love you all. God bless.